From the Toronto Rehab University Centre Theatre, welcome to day 2 of the first TeamUHN Week of Gratitude. Hi everyone, I'm Kyla Kumar, Vice President of UHN Communications and Brand Strategy. This week, we're celebrating all of you at UHN to recognize that we would not be the #1 academic and research hospital in Canada if it weren't for each and every one of you. To say thank you for everything you do for our patients and families, for clinical care, research, and education, for our healthcare system, and for each other. Today's conversation with UHN leaders is a deep dive on investing in TeamUHN, and we want you in the audience to join in. For those of you here at Toronto Rehab and tuning in via live stream, if a question comes to mind, please send it in by going to slido.com, type in the event code, #GratitudeWeek2023, that's all one word, #GratitudeWeek2023, and enter your question. All right, today is all about investing in TeamUHN, where we focus on initiatives created to support our people and strengthen our employee experience. We've assembled a terrific panel, and I must acknowledge, of all female leadership here. Can you all please introduce yourselves and your roles at UHN, starting to my left with Sheila O'Brien.
Thank you, Kyla. I'm delighted to be here. I'm Sheila O'Brien. I'm the Executive Vice President of People and Culture here at UHN.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Darlene Dasent, and I'm the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer here at UHN.
And I'm Dr. Sarah Muddett. I'm the Chief Information Officer here at UHN, as well as across the street at the Hospital for Sick Children.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Ripa. I'm the Executive Vice President of Clinical Support and Performance at UHN.
Okay, thanks everyone. Okay, Sheila, I want to start with you. We want to get into the initiatives in a little bit that your team and our people strategy are moving forward. But first, what I find really insightful is the backstory of what's informing our strategy and how you've spent months and months learning about who TeamUHN is and what they want. So tell us more about that.
Sure. We have, in fact, spent months and months trying to figure this out, because the reality is, here at UHN, over 50% of our employees are millennials or Gen Zs. And our practices and policies historically have been designed by baby boomers for baby boomers. So we have a bit of a disconnect here, and we're doing a reset. We're doing a full reset of everything in people and culture. You will have seen recently that my colleagues in benefits, Andrea Vorwerk and her team, have spent over 2 years creating a new benefits program for us that more closely represents a contemporary benefit plan and is really what people are telling us they want. So trying to figure out who we are and what we want is critical for us to do this reset. So you all know we've done an idea survey. That was an important piece of it. We do climate surveys. We were informed by all of the open forums we had during the pandemic. There were a lot of questions in there, and we captured all of those. So, and we're looking at best practices and what is affordable within the envelope that we have. But what we're doing is looking at this on 2 dimensions. The first is, what does a contemporary set of human resources practices look like in 2023 and beyond for our employees? You know, the old model was hire to retire, and that doesn't cut it anymore. People don't come when they're 21 and retire when they're 65 and say, sayonara, baby. It's very different. People have rhythms of their lives, and we want to make sure that we have systems that respect those rhythms, that people need to pull back and lean in at different times. So that's one thing. But the second thing we need to understand is, what is the culture that reflects the 19,000 members of TeamUHN? We're living and working in one of the most diverse cities in the world. And so we need to make sure that we hear and understand and create and reinforce a culture that lets everybody come to work and be their very best self, be respected, admired, and seen, and be able to make the maximum contribution.
Thanks, Sheila. Okay, so talk to me a little bit more about that. Lots of engagement, lots of conversation. How has that impacted and influenced the priorities that you're focused on moving forward in terms of our people strategy?
Well, we're looking at 2 things. One is the processes and systems. So our benefit plans, our compensation systems, our leadership systems, are all of the things that impact you as an employee of UHN. That's one thing. The second piece is the culture. And in terms of the culture, we're informing that through a series of leadership programs. We have had leadership programs, this one, and this one. And now what we're saying is, look, this needs to be a suite of integrated leadership programs that everybody from the CEO to the frontline leader engage with. And in order to do that, in order to put those things all together, we started with a leadership competency framework. And so we had a high engagement system with members of TeamUHN. What does a leader look like? What is the ideal leader here? Well, how do you want to be led? What matters to you? We've developed a competency framework. We took all of the leadership programs we had and made sure we calibrated them against that competency framework. And then we've added 2 more programs, one for frontline clinical managers and one for the executive level. And why this matters is because by June 30th, we will have had over 200 leaders in UHN, all of whom have gone through those leadership programs. We will be speaking the same language. We will be problem solving the same way. And we'll have a resonance between us from having gone through these systems together.
That's fantastic. So I just want to clarify. So the new leadership development program, this is coming in the new year, 2024.
Yep. But we're also accelerating people going through our other programs because we want to have a critical mass of people, all of whom have that same vocabulary and framework.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to turn to one of the biggest challenges we know is not just a UHN challenge, it's not a provincial healthcare challenge, it's frankly not even a Canadian one. It's a global health challenge, health human resource shortages. Talk to us about our staffing issues right now at UHN and the strategies that we're working on to recruit and retain people.
Well, we've been describing this over the last couple of years as a leaky bucket. You know, the more we bring people in, for sure, and then they fall out the other end. But I think it's important to understand that the HHR crisis was not created by COVID. It was exacerbated by COVID, but it was not created by COVID. So 3 years ago, we did a look at workforce planning. So we said, okay, who's here now? How long are they likely to stay? For example, we learned through doing that we have an average of 400 people who go on maternity leave, on parental leave a year. We had people who were getting very close to retirement, but until we did this work, we couldn't see that. So we looked out 5 years and said, what does our workforce look like now? Where is this going to go? And how do we deal with that? So we changed our recruiting practices. Our recruiting practice used to be post and pray. So we'd post a job and pray that people would respond to it. And, you know, it had some success, but we're being much more proactive now. We are going out into the field. We're targeting people. We're doing things differently in terms of the way we recruit here. Our colleague, Pam Hubley, looked at the whole issue with nurses. And, you know, we were losing 40% of the nurses that came to us within the first 2 years. And once we recognized that through the workforce planning, we said, yikes, what's the scoop here? So Pam and others did a high engagement, high touch program. They called every nurse who'd left and said, why did you leave? What could have kept you here? So she's created, and I know everybody's seen, a brilliant nursing engagement and retention strategy. Mm-hmm. So that's how we're dealing with that. And there's one other thing that we're doing that people ask me about all the time. So we're focusing on retention because we need to keep the people we have. We're focusing on recruiting. And people are saying, hey, how come UHN isn't out there doing international recruiting like everybody else is? Well, in fact, international recruiting is a double-edged sword. First of all, it's very difficult. You have to figure out where the source countries are. But before we even started that, we said, look, what we need to do is create an ethical framework. It's not on for UHN to just go and get empty out a country who has
Right.
extra nurses when they need them. So we have an ethical framework, and we're just in the process right now of developing the thinking around what would it take, and also the costing, because it's going to be very expensive. Now, we have to decide, is this an investment that we can make? And if so, what does that look like? And we expect to have that work finished by mid-December.
Okay, thanks, Sheila. Okay, I'm going to defy convention here. I'm going to go straight to the end of our panel because one of our colleagues actually needs to leave us a little bit early. Rebecca, you're needed at a function with Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Edinburgh, over at the Toronto Western Hospital. And of course, we don't want to be late for royalty. So, Rebecca, let's start with some of the most visible frontline upgrades you've spearheaded this past year with your teams across sites to better serve Team UHN.
Sure. Thank you, Kyla. Well, first of all, I get to have a shout out and gratitude for our environmental services and our FM Pro teams and our facilities team, because a big part of what we've been doing over the last year has really been putting the place back together after COVID. So we've been taking signs down, we've been repainting walls, our services took a beating. I think many would say a lot of our furniture took a beating with all of the tape we had on everything for years. And so they really have been looking at trying to, and landscaping, and we've had construction on the site. So the teams really put an effort in this summer to try to get walls painted and tried to get the landscaping done so that staff would have spaces again that they could have some respite time in. As well, you'll notice that we've started on some of the shared spaces on furniture replacement. We have a lot more to do on that. We have at least 10 campuses, depending on how you count our buildings, and they all need some attention. So we've been focusing a lot there. The other thing that we've been doing has been focusing on our master plan. So our master plan, some of you may know, it's a process that we started in 2018 where we have a language we speak with the ministry about our facility and our site. So we don't have a new building yet, but we don't have new buildings. We have older buildings, and so older buildings need to be maintained. And as we have that conversation with the ministry, there's a process in Ontario where if the ministry agrees with your recommended facilities improvements and programs, they share in that cost. And that's key for us, not only that they share in the cost, but they actually share in the operating costs associated with that. So we've been working very hard at trying to move those projects along, and I hope to be able to tell you a little bit about that today.
Okay, great. So you're also a driving force to develop initiatives that will impact both patients and staff. I want to talk about the retail strategy. People who are enjoying UHN Week of Gratitude may be also aware that there is a number of our retail vendors that are offering discounts this week. Tell us about what is a retail strategy in a hospital network all
Great,
about.
thank you. The retail strategy really has come from working at each site with staff and patients and our vendors to try to understand what kinds of services you will want served best. So for instance, we have anywhere from what you see in terms of our food services, and so the team's been spending a lot of time looking at alternatives. We have a bar burrito, we have a that's coming, we have a new vendor that opened up in the Toronto General Food Court. We've been running pop-ups in the lobbies, both at the Toronto Western and at the Toronto General, and there have been some services at Bickle and otherwise that are self-serve we've been piloting. So there'll be a series of things that we're trying at all the sites, and I think the effort there is to try to see how we can serve our staff, give them some variety, recognizing that they're here 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, so there needs to be services for them. Some other areas we've been focusing, we have a program called Ultim, and Ultim is our physio services, and we also have massage and others. So we opened a site at Princess Margaret that's available for people to register and have massage or have physio. We have sites all around the province. We have over 10 sites, and you can go into any of them, but there are some local at the Toronto West and the Toronto University Avenue sites for people who want to get involved in that. So we are really trying to look at not just retail food, but what are some of the other services that our staff consume and probably our patients, but a large part of our volume every day. We have 20,000 people who work at UHN, and we have many who walk through our sites to get to the subway. And so we have a captive audience, and we want to make sure that we're serving you best. And so we are listening to new ideas. And then I think the other area that we're starting to dabble in a little bit is trying to understand workforce housing. So we're not there yet, but we are understanding that being able to live and affordably live in the downtown core is going to be key to part of our offerings as well.
Thanks. Maybe just explain for people, what is workforce housing?
So anywhere for UHN, it ranges anywhere from people who might be going to stay in residence because they are a student, primarily at Michener. It could be fellows who come here afterwards to do any level of extra training who are still in their training years. It could be any one of us who are wanting to live in the downtown core. And quite frankly, the rents are unaffordable for many. And so it really is looking at working with the City of Toronto and thinking about what our role is. Kevin chatted a little bit yesterday about the fact that we're more than a hospital. And in fact, hospital, he said, isn't even in our name. And we are having conversations every day about, are we outside of our business or is this now our business? And when you think about 20,000 people who just work at UHN, so that doesn't take into consideration any of the other hospitals in this area. We need to understand what our options are around housing for staff, even if that is advocacy perhaps, maybe it is participating in some way, and maybe it is even having localized offerings. So we'll get into that over the next few years, I'm sure.
Okay, thanks. So let's go back. You referenced master planning, which I'm going to describe this probably crudely. Really, we plan for things years, decades in the future so that our next generation of healthcare leaders have some groundwork laid for them and aren't facing some of the pressures coming at them from a standstill. So give us an example of how master planning comes to bear in sort of our work at UHN.
Two things, replacement and growth. So the ministry wants to know, can you replace yourself over time? So some of our buildings are 40, 60, 20 years old. There's a range across all of our facilities, and they require maintenance just like your own home. You have to be able to continue to keep those services up. So that's part of what needs to be there, and at some point, it's not affordable to invest in an old building. You want to replace it, and that's really what the ministry wants to know. Can you replace your site on your site? That's the first deliverable. And then the second is growth. So then they take a look at what disease states are happening in your catchment area. I use air quotes because our catchment area is very broad, but what disease states are occurring, what's the age growth change over time, and then they translate that into beds. So beds is a tricky topic because A, many of our services don't happen in beds anymore, and B, the bedded world is getting bigger. So what used to be 4 people in a room, then was 2 people in a room, now the standard is 1 person in a room. So that requires more space. So then they take beds and they translate that into space, and then they say you have enough space to be able to do this over 25 years, or you don't, and you need a strategy. You'll see our colleagues all around the province. So why would you build a brand new hospital versus why would you renovate? It's replacement and growth. And you can probably explain every new facility under one of those categories.
Okay, great. I have one last question about growth, and then you're off to see Her Royal Highness. Project Aspire, the construction of a state-of-the-art 11-story patient tower at Toronto Western Hospital set to open in 2027. Tell us about the vision for the project. How will it transform patient experience, but also employee experience?
Great. So this project, many of you know, has been on the books probably since about 2012-ish, I want to say. And it was a renovation of the operating rooms at the Toronto Western. And this is a perfect example of replace or build new. So those ORs are 40 years old, and ORs today are at least double, if not 3 times the size of the existing ORs. The air handling is different. Post-COVID, the air handling for everything is different. And what we've learned is post-COVID is we need to be flexible. Sometimes these rooms need to be critical care, sometimes these rooms need to be ward beds, but we need to be able to move quickly. So we had this project that the ministry had endorsed about improvement in a 40-year-old building. And the board was really concerned about putting that investment into a building that probably only had about 20 years maximum before we really had to do a big refurbishing of it. So we looked at what the options were around replacing the operating rooms in the parking lot on the corner of Nassau and Leonard. And it was very possible, but we knew we'd probably only get one shot at doing this. So we said, how high can we go and how big can we go? And we started looking at our master plan and said, we don't have many single room, single washroom inventory for patients. We need new pharmacy space, we need new MDR space, and we took the opportunity to build a case for the ministry to change the renovation of the existing ORs to building 20, 3 new, and 80 plus new beds to the 14th-story tower on that site. So that is going to be a $1 billion project now, and the ministry will share in 90% of the construction costs. That'll be the first funded, not the only, because there is one here that happened as part of Toronto Rehab, but it will be to the acute care sites, probably the first funded big, large project, the ministry. I think there's been smaller ones, but there haven't been a big ministry share in projects up until now. And so that's a big part of it. I started by saying we've been working with the ministry on other projects. There are a few others that they're sharing in. They're sharing in the stem cell redevelopment at Princess Margaret. We have an ask-in for an expansion of our transplant program at the Toronto General that's not yet approved. And we have a big plan on Elizabeth Street to work on with our colleagues at Sick Kids, Pogo, and provincially around a proton facility. So we've been really trying to share with the ministry our role as not only a GTA provider, not only a catchment provider, but a provincial, in some cases, a Canadian provider of services, and trying to make sure that we have that 20-year vision so that we're replacing and building those services for the growth that we need, but Canada needs.
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. All right, I know you have to head out, so please give our best to Her Royal Highness. And this is a good segue.
Should I curtsy?
All of what we just talked about, all of what we just talked about sounds very expensive. So I'm going to turn to my colleague, Darlene, our Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. Darlene, I feel like nervous when I say that you manage a multi-billion-dollar budget, one of the largest in the entire country for a healthcare organization. Share with us some of the challenges and opportunities that come with this type of financial stewardship.
Great. Thank you very much, Kyla. UHN does have a substantial budget of about $3 billion. So when you have a budget that large, that's actually the size of a budget of a small province, it comes along with it a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of ability to actually have significant impact in the lives of those within and outside the walls of UHN. Much of our money still comes from the Ministry of Health, and the majority of our $3 billion is actually spent supporting our staff. About $1.7 billion, over 60% of that money, goes for compensation and staff-related costs. And that's important to note because it's our staff that actually deliver the majority of our services in our clinical care, our education, and our research. The million visits that we actually have coming through our various clinics are supported by all of our teams and all of our staff. So that's where the majority of our budget currently goes. Some of the challenges that we actually have is because so much of our money comes from the province and from the taxpayer, there's a lot of accountability that's actually required in terms of stewardship and being able to demonstrate how the funds are spent for the intended purposes. So we work closely with our colleagues at the ministry to be able to do so. And we work closely with all the teams at UHN as the money is very well spent in support of the organization.
Thanks, Darlene. So the work of our frontline healthcare workers is critical. So too, and I'm thinking about all of us here, we have enterprise-wide portfolios. So the teams that provide this work daily, it's so foundational to making all of the engines run at UHN. Tell me a little bit about our finance colleagues and what informs decision-making on how dollars are spent at UHN.
I have to give a shout out to my finance colleagues. They're an amazing team that supports the entire organization. And really, I think every part of the organization has a touch point with finance, either through an analyst or an advisor that really helps decide in terms of how the money is best spent. So our dollars are allocated throughout the organization, but the decisions in terms of how they're spent day to day rest with the leadership of the various areas. And I can tell you, we have very strong leadership teams throughout UHN that day in and day out make the best decisions on how the dollars and the resources are spent in support of our overall mission. The other thing that I would also say is that there are some complexities with the funding formulas that actually determine what we can do and how much we get paid. And our finance colleagues spend a lot of their time working with our clinical colleagues, our research colleagues, and our colleagues in education, navigating those waters and determining the best use of the funds for UHN.
Okay, thanks, Darlene. So one of my observations since joining UHN is we like to give projects names with the letter A. We just talked about Project Aspire with Rebecca. I want to talk about Project Agile now. So one of UHN's key network-wide initiatives is Project Agile. For those of us not directly involved, can you explain what is Project Agile and how is it going to impact everybody at UHN?
So one of UHN's overall strategic initiatives is to unleash the power of innovation and technology. So Project Agile is the finance, supply chain, procurement component of that. And it's really an amazing project that's actually going to revolutionize and modernize all of our back office systems. Everyone, I think, at UHN who orders supplies, receives goods, is going to be impacted by Project Agile. It's going to bring us into, I like to think, almost like the next century in terms of modernizing our tools, not only for our team, but also for our vendors and those externally to UHN whom we actually interact with. We've got an amazing multidisciplinary team that includes representations from all of our various areas working on Project Agile, helping ensure the way the system is designed and built and the decisions that are made will benefit the broader organization when it's all said and done. So we're really looking forward to that. We're going live on December the 4th, and it's going to be an amazing time for the organization.
Thanks, Star. Okay, you spoke to harnessing the power of technology to transform how we work, so that feels like a perfect segue to turn to Sarah Muddett, Vice President.
Pressure.
Yeah, no pressure, and Chief Information Officer. Sarah, your leadership was essential to the 2022 launch of EPIC, UHN's transformational health information system. I'm curious, what are you hearing today from Team UHN about this new system?
Oh, thank you. But let me start by saying I was incredibly privileged to be part of the Synapse project here at UHN and the massive clinical transformation that occurred with the implementation, and by no means take credit. This was a Team UHN success. Every member of Team UHN contributed, participated, and helped bring EPIC live in June of 2022. So all I can say is thank you, each and every one of you, and the journey continues. And it doesn't mean there hasn't been some pain, and there's different parts of the organization that have experienced a smoother transition to the new EMR, but in other areas are still struggling. But our commitment is to continue to work with each and every user and every department to make that a smoother and more seamless experience for our users and for our patients as well. So I think this is I think about where we should be a year and a half post-go live, certainly by my experience with previous implementations and sort of comparing notes with our peers both across Ontario and across North America in general. So I think we've done very well. It's a huge credit, and thank you to everybody at Team UHN who made that possible.
Thanks, Sarah. So the scope of your portfolio ranges from preparing our organization for the potential for a cyber attack to launching and supporting virtual care for our patients. Talk to us about the guiding principles for decision-making around technology and how we use it to best serve patients and staff at UHN.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. It's such an important question. I could probably just say ditto from what Darlene just said, because we don't make the decisions in digital alone. We're here to serve the business and to help technically enable the goals, objectives, and vision of UHN. So we don't make the decisions, but what we do is we collect all the requests, and the requests always far outstrip our capacity, whether it's time, money, effort. We never have enough to do everything that we would like to do. So we do have some difficult decisions to make every year. And what we've created are oversight committees with members of the business to help us make those decisions. So as the requests come in, and I know some of those come in as minor fixes or enhancements into our ServiceNow platform, please keep sending your tickets. I know people are frustrated, and sometimes you feel like we're not listening, but we are. And we're looking at those tickets, and we're prioritizing every day. So please don't give it up. We really need your voice. And then what we do with the bigger projects and so on is we actually collect those kinds of requests department by department. Many of you will be working with our digital clinical partner, our digital corporate partner, education, patient experience. They outreach to various areas of UHN to collect demands. We bring them forward, and then we bring them to digital councils for votes. So in other words, what we do in digital is we take those requests, we scope them, we figure out how much time and effort it requires, what the cost is, and then we can take that back, we can prioritize and put everything, our best foot forward to meet the demands for the organization.
Okay, so that in mind, tell us about future initiatives in the pipeline at UHN Digital. Where are we headed next on the digital roadmap? Who voted and got to the top?
We're not quite there. We're in the middle of capital and operating planning, as everybody knows. But one of the most important things, particularly for Epic, is our commitment is to stay current. And we didn't do that with EPR. I think everybody understands that it was a bit of an archaic system, 30 years in the making by the time we retired it. But we take upgrades quite regularly. That means we're getting new functionality and capability on a 2, 3, 4 times a year basis. And then what we're doing is finding the new opportunities. So there's some really exciting work with extending Epic to other either modules and functions, or extending even the reach. So I think many in the room here probably are familiar that Wisdom Dentistry went live quite recently and very successfully. We have Altum Health going live in December. We have Beaker Anatomic Pathology going live in April of #24. And we're looking at all the many other things we can do to extend Epic to meet other needs and other priorities of the organization, like remote patient monitoring, anything to do with integrated care, care closer to home, and of course, providing data and analytics for the organization as well. It's a source of truth. Data quality always at your first go live is a little bit fuzzy for a bit, and we've worked hard with finance to be sure that we're getting the sorts of data that we need to meet all of our reporting requirements to government, and we've done so, and I think, again, I think that's very exciting. But beyond Epic itself, there are so many other opportunities. As we create the new strategic plan, you can see that almost every visionary statement requires some sort of technology enablement. And so that's, it's a good news story and a somewhat challenging story, but it really is the way of the future. I think we're all very excited about where artificial intelligence and generative AI will take us. We're hoping that using the generative AI within our systems will improve the experience by doing notes and so on our behalf. I think there's other opportunities with Epic and others to really smooth the patient and provider experience. I hope many of you filled out the class survey in the last month or so. This is where we're gathering more information on what are those pain points that we mentioned early on? How can we make that better? So our commitment will be about the provider, the user experience, making sure everybody's highly proficient with the system, using it effectively, and really generating the value. And that's something I really want to say, that a year and a half out, we are beginning to see the value. There's no question that we can see the impact on quality and safety, the impact by having a single source of truth for patient information, and that's really exciting. But we're going to continue the back office refresh as well. So we'll get through Agile, and it will take some time for stabilization and optimization with Agile. And then we're going to partner with Sheila and her team. We're building the business case to replace our human resource information system and enterprise staff scheduling. And that is a short list of what we're trying to entertain in the coming year or two.
Take the deep, that's a lot. Okay, I'm going to turn. I have one more question for you, Sheila. I do want to we're going to be going to audience questions in a moment, and this is your last chance to get them in. So use your phone, go to slido.com, Gratitude Week 2023. Sheila, we've talked about a number of initiatives here. when I think about all of this, talk to us about what is the UHN employee value proposition? Why should people come to UHN, stay? Why is it such a great place to work? Synthesize your thoughts for us on that.
You know, that's the question. That's the central question. We all know that lots of people, by the time they get to UHN, have passed 5 other hospitals, or 3, or whatever. And so what is it that keeps them on the TTC to stay here and come to work at UHN? And we've been thinking about that a lot. And we've been engaging with focus groups and others. We've been looking in our own heads and trying to figure it out. And really, UHN is different. And at the risk of sounding a bit, proud maybe, UHN is special. We have the most complex patients in Canada. We have world-class physicians and researchers. We have systems where we're inventing stuff all the time. I mean, we brought an organ on a drone, right?
Yeah.
So we continue to do that. And what we're doing right now is we're crafting that value proposition. And this isn't how it's going to come out. But this is the sort of the base of it, is that UHN isn't for everybody. UHN is for those people who want to work in a highly complex environment with high intensity, with high demand, high reward from the quality of the work. And we're just sort of working our way through that right now. But that's one of the things that we will deliver into the organization by the end of the first quarter, is what is that value proposition? So to the extent that anybody here hasn't been engaging in that yet, if you have thoughts about it, just email me and let me know, because we're trying to gather it all. We know basically what it looks like, but we're going to be refining it over the next while.
Okay, thanks, Sheila. Okay, I want to hand this discussion over to our audience. Just before we go there, I want to just double check. Is there any area with our panelists here, is there any other observations, anything we haven't got to that you think is important for TeamUHN to hear today?
I have something.
Good, go.
Yeah, it's about you.
Oh.
Actually, I think UHN is 70% women. And 3 or 4 years ago, we created UHN Women under the leadership of Catherine Wang. And Catherine, as you know, has now moved to a new opportunity. So I am delighted to tell you on behalf of Brian Hodges and myself, who are the executive sponsors, that the new leaders of UHN Women are Kyla Kumar and Dar Descent. So
Thanks, Sheila. I won't speak for Dar, but you know what? I'm super excited about it, and it's a privilege. It genuinely is a privilege. Okay, so I think I'm going to turn to our Slido questions. Okay, here we go. I'm happy to read these out for our colleagues. So our first question is, many organizations have endorsed hybrid work for its ability to provide work-life balance. Does UHN have a plan for hybrid work? I'm probably going to ask Sheila and my friend Sarah to comment on that, because technology is an enabler. Okay, who wants to go first?
Sheila does.
thank you, Sarah. The answer is yes. We talk about hybrid work, but actually some people hear it as remote work. And so hybrid work and remote work are 2 very different things. And let's remember, we're a hospital. We're a health system. And so for most of the people here, that's not an option yet. There's robotics and all of that, but that's a different thing. So yes, we are in the process of rolling out sort of department by department what hybrid work looks like. And so in PNC, we've developed a template and a framework that's available to everybody in terms of how to make the decisions and what that can look like. So we're going there with the help from my dear colleague Sarah, who's going to enable us.
Yeah, I think we already have. I think that's, COVID was a key driver, and I think everybody at UHN who was not in front-facing patient care, was able to embrace Microsoft Teams and remote opportunities very quickly, and we brought it up very quickly. I think we will continue to have the opportunity for hybrid work, as we should. I think some of the challenges we have is being sure people, when they are coming in, are doing high-value work on site, and that's always a really interesting thing. If you come into work and you're doing 8 Teams meetings, that doesn't always add up to practicality. So thinking that part through. But the one thing I would want to mention is, and we sort of glossed over in one of your earlier questions, Kyla, that we can't ignore the cybersecurity posture when we're doing hybrid work as well. So we really have to be very diligent on how we're implementing remote access, and to be sure that we keep our information, our patient data, and so on safe and secure. So I know sometimes that's a bit painful, doing VPN and multi-factor authentication and password changes. Bear with us, because it really is an important piece of keeping UHN safe and secure.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, how does UHN plan to change compensation and promotion opportunities for Team UHN?
That's a great question. I think many of you will have heard that we are doing a compensation review, and I just want to emphasize that is not a trivial pursuit, and it's not an easy thing. The first thing we have to, most of our job descriptions here are at least 20 years old. We haven't had a systemic, comprehensive review of our compensation system for a minimum of 15 years. Many of the hospitals against whom we benchmark have changed. And so even when we try and look at things, it's often apples to oranges. So we are being very thoughtful about it. This is a system, the system we have is 20 years in the making. We're not going to fix it overnight, but we do need to modernize it. And so the first step, and many people here, I think, have been involved, and if you have, thank you, is we're doing job descriptions for 600 roles in the company. 600 roles is a lot, but it's not all of them. That will form the basis on which we do the system redesign. So we've fallen a bit behind on that piece of it, because every time we got started, COVID again. So, it's been start, stop, but we expect to have all of the data analysis work done by the end of Q1, or of Q4, which is, what I mean, end of March. And once we have the data, the analytics done, then we're going to be able to look at how do we stack up. So it's really, the compensation system is a long road, but we're going to do it well, and we're going to do it right, and we're going to make sure that things here are fair and equitable, and people are well compensated as they can be in this sector. The sector has its own rules and regulations. With respect to promotions, promotions are part of a function of our leadership capability and competency, as well as the individual performance by a person. And I will say that we're not completely consistent across UHN in terms of promotions and evaluation. But again, I talked earlier about how we're going to have 200 people who have gone through our leadership development and training work by the end of June. And we're developing new systems, and we're developing ladders and all of those kind of things. So it's all of a piece, and it's of the piece whereby we modernize UHN. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, thanks. Just before we leave that, they're moving for me here. Sheila, they're asking you to be a futurist. Sheila, what do you think our workforce of the future will look like? Will there be new roles introduced? Actually, I'm wondering if, Sarah, you might want to think about this, technology in the future. So,
well, why don't I start, and Sarah can correct my work. Yes, there will be new roles. One of the things we're looking at right now is the impact of AI. And, some of us might have had a construct in our heads that AI is this thing out there that doesn't, well, you know what? In recruiting, we're getting resumes, and we look at them and we go, wow. And then when we go to the interview doesn't match the resume. And that's because ChatGPT has been helping with the resume. So we have to learn how to adapt ourselves to the world. But we have a project going on with Bo Wang right now where we're looking at what are the roles that might change as a result of AI. There are some roles here that might actually disappear. We don't know what they are, but everything is changing, and we need to be on top of that. We need to understand how AI should make all of our work better. It should, and we've got to make sure it's on us to make sure that we're on top of that and that we utilize those opportunities. So, Sarah?
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think you probably heard a little bit yesterday about AI as well, but it is a key strategic opportunity. I think we're taking it very seriously, but also very cautiously, because we've all read about some of the issues, concerns, and potential hazards. But to implement it well, exactly as Sheila said, it can certainly, doesn't necessarily replace people, but allows people to take on high-value work and not have to do a lot of administrivia, if you like, in some cases. And if we can use everybody at the highest potential of their work, I think that's exactly what we're aiming for. And whether it's introducing chatbots or virtual assistants or RPA, any number of things could change the way people can do their work and concentrate on high-value work and get more satisfaction from doing so.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. All right, interesting question. Wondering, as we're looking at staffing retention, is there any thought to having a child care on site similar to Sunnybrook's Creche Child Care Center?
And Rebecca's not here.
I can do that one.
Can you?
And Dar can help me with it, yeah. You know what? It would be a lovely thing to do, be a wonderful thing to do. But there are so many regulations around a daycare that restrict the number of children that you can have in there. It's a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing from a regulatory perspective, a cost perspective, but really from an equity perspective. So one of the things that UHN Women is doing, ladies, so thank you, is they're developing a resource directory. And that resource directory is going to go live, I want to say this week or next. And it's really what resources are available, primarily for women, but for families at UHN. And we're looking at the other thing that we need to be very, very, very careful about with daycares is credentialing and regulatory compliance. So it's complicated, but for now what we're doing is looking at a resource directory to show where there are spots available. And I know Rebecca is thinking about it, we're all thinking about it, but it's hard to get it moving very quickly because of all of the things that appear to be holding us back.
Okay, thanks, Sheila. All right, question. Can salary ranges be made available on the intranet? Our pay stubs report the code, but it's difficult to know what that means. Pardon me.
Well, that's a good question, and it's an interesting question. And that one is one that, as we're doing the review, we're going to be much more transparent about how things fit together, what the structure is. Our salary ranges right now have the same issue that many of our other systems have, and that's that they are old and they're not contemporary, and in some cases we honor salary ranges more in the breach than in the approvals. So we will make a commitment as we roll out, as we understand and do the analytics and roll it out, we will definitely, our salary ranges will be transparent.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Darlene, this one is about finance. What is your anticipation of budget trends over the next few years? Will our funders support our current activity and growth?
That's a great question. You know, coming out of the pandemic, it was a time of unprecedented financial support from the province as well as the federal government to really allow finances not to be a barrier during the pandemic to do what actually needed to be done. You know, that pandemic hopefully is in the rearview mirror for most of us, and I anticipated that our financial situation and our funding levels will stabilize. We'll be in a time, I wouldn't say full austerity measures, but I think we're going to be in a time where our funding levels will continue to be tightly tightly tied to the activity that we actually need to do. So, I see the second part of that question. Will our funders support our current activity and growth? I would say yes, they currently do, and we have lots of conversations with the province to continue to support and fund the activity levels and growth at UHN. One of the things that's going to be really important for us is to continue to invest not only in activity and growth, but in innovation with our facilities, with our people, with our researchers. So conversations also continue to ensure we've got the right funding levels to support those other elements of the organization as well.
Okay, thanks, Darlene. Okay, our next question, will salary increases be based on performance in the future? As this year, it was the same increase for most.
Yes. This year was a transition year, and I have to say we've had three 3 years of trying to manage. First of all, during heavy COVID, nobody had the bandwidth to be able to do the things that needed to be done to have a performance-based salary increase program. And we were hanging on by our fingernails, all of us. And so we tried to do what was practical. This year, with the repeal of Bill 124 and all of the things associated with that, we decided that the best course of action for us was to do an across the board. And what we were trying to do, we know there's a gap between us and the market. We don't know how big it is, but we know there's a gap. And so everybody else in the sector did what we did, and they did it before us, and we decided that we would go with the sector and do that. But UHN, as I said earlier, is a very special place to work, and in order for it to be a high-performing workplace, we have to have a robust and rigorous performance evaluation system. And performance and compensation go together, and we're going to knit those two together in a transparent and fair way once we've completed the rest of this work.
Thanks, Sheila. Okay, our next question is there any plan to look at career progression without people management? Generally at UHN, progressive opportunities require taking on people management. Can we recognize not all people want to do this, but want to grow through their roles?
Another excellent question, and yes, in fact, we can, because there are two types of leadership. There's people leadership and idea leadership. And so when we're developing our new progression and system, we will look at both of those things. I mean, let's face it, UHN has some highly technical, highly capable people who are individual contributors. That's what they want to do, and that's what they should do. And so that's a reality that we're going to build into our new system.
Thanks, Sheila. Okay, and then a quick question on the idea survey. How are results being shared?
The results are being shared as we speak. They're being rolled out. We're not doing a big bang. Here's what it is. We were very pleased with the survey. We had about a 30% participation rate, which is good for the first time you do this. We're learning how to do it. So what we're doing is we're going to each individual unit, sharing the results in that unit, and so your people consultant has the results, and they're going to work you through it. We have a template and we have a process, and we're hoping to get to how can we make some changes as we work through that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, one last question, and I think then that we're going to wrap for today's session. And the last question goes back to AI. What opportunities does this group foresee AI creating for our workforce at UHN?
I don't know if we have much to add from our previous discussion, but I'll just give you an example of something we're entertaining right now. Through Nuance, which is our voice dictation system, if you like, they're introducing ambient voice recognition. And we're looking at a pilot here at UHN, which means when our providers sit down and have an encounter with a patient, it's automatically being digested by the Nuance DAX solution and spits out the conversation in almost like the CVs you were talking about, probably in a better format than most physicians would be able to put together. And I hope they don't take that personally. I'm a doctor and I can attest to it. But it is an opportunity where our docs then don't have to spend hours after work doing more notes and clarifying notes, and it's a huge opportunity. So that's an early opportunity for us just to road test that and see what that means. But we're beginning to see any number of things. Some of the things we've found when people are looking for information, perhaps from HR or from finance, and they're going into the systems trying to find policies or trying to get an answer about their benefits, artificial intelligence can start taking that over. And again, you can have a virtual assistant, and we don't have to have people answering the phone and trying to direct people to where they're going, and they can focus on more high-value work. But not that serving and answering questions isn't high-value work, but there are some that it's nice to have it automated, and it's much quicker, and people don't get lost in the navigation of finding an answer.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, we've come to the end of our time today, day 2 of the Team UHN Week of Gratitude, where we celebrate you and say thank you. UHN would not be UHN without all of you. I want to thank all my colleagues for taking the time to come today and share your insights. Thank you to everyone here at the Toronto Rehab University Centre Theatre for joining us, as well as those of you who are tuning in on our live stream. Today's broadcast will be posted after on our UHN YouTube page. Join us tomorrow when we'll be revealing the UHN Local and Global Impact Award winners. That's starting at noon, Wednesday, November 8th, live from Schatz Hall at the Michener Institute of Education at UHN. If you can't make it in person, you can join us via live stream. And if you want to know more about the Team UHN Week of Gratitude, go to What's Happening Now on our SharePoint site and click on any of our daily events for a link to full details about the week, or use the link in the email that you'll be receiving shortly in your inbox. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow from the Michener Institute. Have a great afternoon.